All right. Good evening, everyone. Seeing as it's a few minutes after the hour, I think we can go ahead and get started. I'm Brad Gallagher. I'm the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner for District 1E01 in Parkview and chair of this committee. I'm proud to call to order the 7th monthly meeting of ANC 1E Zoning and Economic Development Committee at 7:05 p.m. Members of the committee, members of the community, invited presenters, thank you for being here tonight. It's great to see all of you. Some background, just if you're joining us for the first time, the elected ANC commissioners of ANC 1E have charged this committee with working through issues of land use, planning, zoning, historic preservation for the neighborhood on the ANC's behalf, given the plethora of issues the ANC has to get through every month. So this committee conducts public meetings like this one on the first Wednesday of every month, and we report our findings to the ANC commissioners, who then officially vote on courses of action. So this committee is composed of 4 of the 7 elected ANC commissioners in 1E and 8 additional neighbors who've also decided to volunteer their time in service to the community. So to all 11 of you who join me in this monthly endeavor, thanks for your time and your efforts as always. Also would like to extend the invitation to anyone else living in the boundaries of ANC 1E who's interested in serving on this committee to please contact me or your ANC commissioner for more information. So a few administrative notes, this meeting is being recorded and that recording will be posted on our website, anc1e.org. If you are joining via computer or web browser and you wish to participate, you can virtually raise your hand, or if you're calling in by phone, you can do the same by dialing *9. I'll note that proper public notice of this meeting has been served. It's been noticed to the community via ANC 1E's website and email listserv, as well as social media alerts to as many community groups as possible. Now I'll call the roll of committee members I believe are with us here tonight. Do we have Adam Chamey? Hearing none. Commissioner Brian Footer.
Present.
Bradford Grant.
Here.
Excellent. Commissioner Josh Jacobson has let us know he won't be able to be here tonight, but in case of the need for a quorum or a tie-breaking vote, he will sign in later. Dimitri McDaniel.
Here.
Alice Mortlock. Hearing none. Pat Nelson.
Here.
Tony Norman.
Present.
And I don't think Kay Pearson or Jess Remington have been able to join us. Please let me know if that's not the case. And Commissioner Michael Ray.
Present.
Great. Nice to see you all this evening. So looking at this evening's agenda, which Commissioner Ray is dutifully sharing via his screen, I would like to I'll ask the committee, does anyone have any changes they would like to request to this agenda? All right, hearing and seeing none, I'll motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the agenda as drafted. Are there any objections? Great. Hearing and seeing none, the agenda is hereby adopted. Moving on to community announcements and presentations. Commissioners or members of the community are welcome to use this time to make public announcements or distribute information that you think might be of general interest to the community about issues relevant to this committee, zoning, economic development, historic preservation, those sorts of things. We do have Howard University, who's already let us know that they would like to make a presentation, but if there are any other community members who'd like to bring up any issues, please raise your hand virtually or dial *9 at this time. All right, hearing and seeing none, but please correct me if that's not the case. I would like to invite Howard University to present on their real estate strategy. So Ms. Edmondson, is there anyone else? I will elevate you to panelist status. Is there anyone else that we should elevate similarly? And you should be able to speak once we actually, yep, thank you. Okay.
Hi, gentlemen. How's everybody doing?
Hey, great to see you, Ms. Edmondson. Always nice to hear from you and the Howard University team.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we are here this evening to present to you all the map amendment for the Wonder Plaza project known as Project J in the Campus Master Plan. And we will also be talking about the CVS and Howard University Hospital. I wanted to also say to the 1B members and who came as public, thank you for being amenable, because it was quite something trying to schedule everybody. All you guys are so busy, you know, we're all so busy. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's what we're going to do. I will say, someone asked about our new president's where he's coming from. He's coming from Case Western University, and his undergrad he did Dartmouth, and his graduate he did Columbia. He went to Columbia. So, and I will now give you who everyone knows, Derek Luke Williams, Neek Williams. I'm sorry, Derek. It was the French. It was the French. Derek Neek Williams.
Oh, no, it's Nice. That's
See,
the anglicized
I still didn't
version.
do it right. Derek Nice Williams.
We're not going to get into how to pronounce it in Polish. We'll leave that alone for the evening. Well, again, thank you for the introduction, Teresa. And again, I want to re-thank all of the members of the community that were able to come and join today. You know, to hear some of the latest and greatest from the institution. So a couple of things, I think, you know, just to sort of go in reverse order, I'll start with talking about the CVS, go into the HUH, and then talk a little bit about, you know, some of the recent events that have occurred in our immediate environs, just to kind of, you know, have a little dialogue about that. And then do want to get into the meat and potatoes of the reason why we wanted to come today, which is the map amendment that the university wants to pursue to change some of the zoning to be more compliant with the underlying comprehensive plan for the District of Columbia. So with that, I'll start off on the CVS side. So I think for some prior meetings that we had, which maybe not all the participants here today had the ability or option to join, you know, we have been working on the underlying zoning surrounding that CVS site in tandem with the underlying WMATA tunnel that runs under the site. And so, you know, there were obviously some, you know, trade-offs with respect to density and the means and methods of construction there needed to vault over that metro tunnel and, you know, make sure that it was not affected by the construction. So we had on the table an opportunity to potentially upzone that site to a higher density designation within the arts designation. Right now it's an arts 2. And we were looking at, you know, the potential to upzone that to an arts 3 or potentially something, you know, even higher. So we discussed with OP, others, and actually did go back to a couple of the development partners that we've been working with in the corridor to get some due diligence done surrounding that. And ultimately, you know, it actually seems as though, and I think we'll know definitively as early as the end of this week, that moving forward as a matter of right on that site, as opposed to going through any sort of zoning changes, might actually be the more fortuitous approach to it, given all of the constraints related to the metro tunnel. So, you know, it's complex because there's some trade-offs between the lot coverage, lot occupancy, and the height and everything else between what we might upzone it to. And we're considering an arts 3 versus an arts 2, but I think, you know, everybody would like to activate that site and get some development going there sooner rather than later. And a matter of right project definitely does that, because it obviates the need to have to go through a lengthy zoning amendment process. So hopefully we'll have some findings later this week, definitively between the various developers we're having to try to triangulate our findings to make sure that that is the appropriate step. And, you know, ultimately then we'll move into the deal negotiations in earnest so that we can actually move forward with a development post haste over there. In terms of near-term activation of that site until such development is able to occur, we have received a couple of unsolicited proposals. And, you know, frankly, I'd say that we have passively solicited, but not anything that we put out like a formal RFP for. And so those are under consideration, but as discussed a little earlier, we are in the midst of a presidential transition. So that time frame for the review of that is being compounded with a couple other critical elements and factors that we're going through on the campus. So just wanted to pause there and see if there are any further questions, and obviously encourage any thoughts or ideas in terms of, or concepts in terms of activating that site in the interim, so that we can move out of the realm of a vacant facility and a vacant parking lot that's fenced off and into something that actually has some life and vibrancy to the corridor. So I usually defer to Teresa to be the MC. I can totally be the MC in terms of, when I see Larry, you have your hand up, so please go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi everyone, Larry Hanrahan, ANC for 1B01. I normally would defer to 1E commissioners, although the CVS site's in 1B. So I really appreciate being welcomed here tonight and want to jump in on the short-term activation point, Derek. Are you looking at options for both the parking lot and the interior of the CVS site? It would be great to just know if there's anything the community can do to kind of weigh or push you in one direction or the other. I would just say with a number of us have been in T Street task force meetings to talk about some of the public safety concerns there. And I do think similar to what you said about the benefits of matter of right, maybe like not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think the sooner we get near-term activation, just try a couple things. It could really change the dynamic, the public safety dynamics at the site, in addition to adding some really valuable community amendments. So amenities, I know you've heard that from us before, just put the plug in here. And then if you could answer the question about the parking lot versus the interior.
Yeah, so to answer your question, so heard loud and clear and appreciate that insight from the T Street task force. And we'll say that it is, holistic. So we're looking at solutions that would activate both the parking lot as well as the indoor space. And so they don't necessarily have to be the same functions. They could be two separate sort of operations. But synergistic functions are a little bit easier because then there's less parties involved. But again, I think we're open to considering just about anything in terms of, those two parameters, like the indoor space versus the surface parking lot. Did that answer your question?
Yep. Thanks so much. And then I would just say, as a quick follow on, trying things and seeing what works. Like we would be very supportive and in 1B and happy to advertise or help in any way as you think about activation options. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good stuff. So again, just to reiterate, any thoughts or concepts, feel free to shoot them to Teresa or myself, or all of the above, and we'll make sure to run those up the flagpole. So then pivoting into, well, and actually, this is actually a good point because the hospital is sort of related to some of the map amendment things I want to talk about.
Derek, can I just interject one quick thought pattern here while we're thinking about the CVS site? Sorry,
Sure.
My head was going a mile a minute. Just a thought here, based on previous discussions that you and I and Tony Freeman had about prospects for the CVS site prior to it becoming available so fast, was the thought of doing some kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word, movable bin type things that were outside for multiple vendors to use, kind of like street vendor type things. The storage carts or whatever the heck they're called, the
Shipping containers.
Yeah, the containers, couldn't think of the right word. Well, I shouldn't say has, should the university also consider, and just put it out as a thought pattern here, since you're going to be developing that site and there's the parking lot, but then there's only one entrance to the building and you'd probably end up having one vendor or one use inside the building. whether the university would consider tearing down the old building, since it's just a one-story building, and making that whole lot available to be able to use for the outdoor facilities, things which would then activate the entire site and be able to be used for multiple vendors on an outdoor piece, which then prevents or protects for more of a interactive space instead of having a building that's being used by one vendor and then something used in the parking lot. Just an idea that I think you guys should think about and weigh the pros and cons of, because that building's going to come down no matter what you do in a redevelopment.
Yeah, I mean, you make a valid point that, any developer is going to appreciate a clean site to work with, as opposed to something that they have to then go into and perform demolition. So I think, in the context of all things, that's definitely something that we would be open to considering. All right, so pivoting in really quickly, just to kind of touch lightly on a sensitive topic. There have been a number, and I know, you mentioned the T Street Task Force, but there have been a number of incidents surrounding the campus, violent crime, break-ins, et cetera, and that's not uncommon in the summertime in this area, but the proximity to our campus in particular, I mean, with the shooting of the construction worker that was over in the steam plant project, and then reports that we're getting from developers about shots being fired, into construction sites or close to around construction sites. It's it's becoming a pretty major problem. And so, our developer friends are concerned, and obviously our workers, that are on site are concerned. We have students moving in this week. So parents and families are here, et cetera. So just generally, looking, and not anything for us to resolve today, but just looking for as many inroads and possibilities for the university and this community to collaborate on ways to leverage and, help, get the support that we need from the city in terms of, addressing and sort of dealing with these things. Because there's, a lot of development, slated to go into this corridor. We might want to make sure that, that it becomes and remains a safe and vibrant corridor, for years to come. So just kind of wanted to underscore that as an important and really sensitive topic that, I think as a collective group, we really need to address. I know that Teresa does a lot of work, in the neighborhood, talking with all the various groups. But I think, that this is something that kind of calls for an elevated level of interaction and collaboration. So just wanted to kind of put a comment out there to that and see if you guys had any thoughts about that.
Well, the good thing is they actually found the person who shot the construction worker, 14-year-old, and he's been arrested. So that's a positive thing.
I mean, one day I was walking into the office, and I was looking out from my second floor window at the intersection of Florida Avenue and 10th Street. And, the police were out there, had pulled the car over and flagged it down, et cetera. And it had been a carjacking that just occurred that morning, right along Georgia Avenue. And the police were able to intercept and sort of catch the situation, right in front of the university's building, right there in the service center. So again, it's not just necessarily violent crime, but there's just a lot of different things going on in the area. So I think that to the extent that we can be helpful and collaborative on that, please do let us know if there are any things that come up in any of these task forces or any of the sort of security-based or public safety-based groups. Any thoughts about how the university can help? We certainly want to be cognizant of that and help in any way possible. So, I think make sure that Teresa is brought into the loop on anything necessary or any thoughts, even if it's, a crazy idea that might help.
Hey, Derek, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you vocalizing that Howard University is very interested in that topic. I do believe that we have a pretty packed agenda for today, and this is the Zoning and Economic Development Committee. So my recommendation would be for you to join the Public Safety and Engagement Committee, which also meets monthly. And, that would be a great topic. And I think it would be fantastic for Howard University leadership to come and provide resources and additional kind of thoughts and brainstorming on how we can make a sizable dent in this really, really important topic. So with what you're saying here, can we commit you to actually coming to the next Public Safety Committee meeting and actually having a fruitful conversation about what resources Howard University is willing to bring to the table?
When is the next meeting? You said it's Mondays. Which Monday?
It is on Monday, September 11th. At 7
9/11.
p.m.
That's an auspicious day to have a public safety
Right.
engagement meeting. All right. Well, I don't want to slow this meeting down by trying to look through my calendar right now, but I put a note down in that. And also, I mean, I think that really like our chief of police and some others might also be most appropriate for that sort of a setting. But yeah, let me put a pin in
Absolutely.
that and circle back just so we don't slow this meeting down.
And to that point, you know, I would really look to you and Teresa, you know, post this meeting, and I can work with you guys over the next month to take a leadership role in really trying to coordinate those actors at Howard University to come to that meeting. That would be extremely helpful, and we would appreciate it.
10-4, loud and clear. All right, so to keep the agenda moving to your earlier point, wanted to discuss really quickly just an update on the university's hospital, which is that you know, we just recently released a slew of solicitations for, you know, cost consultants, construction managers, architects, engineers, et cetera, related to that. So that has a, you know, fairly aggressive time frame. But we are looking to have all the various parties, and we already secured, you know, the owner's representative that's going to be sort of, you know, program managing this with the university. And so, you know, by, you know, September timeframe, you know, but by the end of that month, it's highly likely that we'll have awarded and, you know, quite possibly executed all of the agreements that are necessary to push forward on that project in earnest. So that's, you know, I think a very positive momentum move for the institution, and also, you know, continue to work with our partner Adventist Healthcare, who we've been under MSA with since 2020, and, you know, looking forward to continuing on with them as our programming partner on this development in the corridor. So just wanted to kind of highlight that there are a lot of things moving, but most pointedly the procurements, which are a major element of any major capital project, are moving forward in earnest, and that has kickstarted. So I'll make sure to send those solicitations to Teresa, and if anyone is interested or has any, you know, interest in, or is affiliated with anyone who's interested in the project, that's something that we definitely want to expand. So it's not, you know, an invitation only solicitation. It is open for any and anyone, you know, any qualified firms to bid on. And in tandem with that, also just wanted to highlight that in late September, on the 21st, if I'm not mistaken, university is holding a, for lack of a better term, a fair or a bazaar of sorts related to minority participation for underutilized businesses and minority, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses, et cetera, to kind of highlight a lot of the capital projects, you know, the hospital and all of the academic as well as the commercial projects we have going on in this corridor. It's part of a broader initiative we have called Howard Builds, which, you know, is sort of evocative of Howard building the capacity in the local contracting community and throughout the metropolitan region, really, to you know, step up to the plate so that we can have a very high percentage of minority spend and minority participation and capacity building through this process. And we've also involved the University Small Business Development Center in terms of, you know, advice and counseling and whatnot. So something that I think invites are starting to go out to that, but just wanted to kind of highlight that also as another activity the university is undertaking as part of this whole capital campaign related to the hospital and all the other projects that we're working on. So any questions on the hospital before I pivot into the main event, which I think should only take about 5 minutes for me to go through, maybe less, in terms of the actual content. Oh, I see Larry has his hand up.
Thank you. Sorry to dominate. This is my FMD. So thrilled the hospital development is moving along. 2 quick questions. Could you share what you know about the planned zoning for the site? And also for me, but maybe for the community too, can you give us a bit of a short-term timeline, like what it might mean for community engagement to have the procurements ordered or executed, or agreements ordered and executed by the end of September? Like what happens after that, and like what can we expect as far as like the design process and the community's input?
Got it. Okay. So to discuss the planned zoning surrounding it, and this plays in a little bit to the forthcoming presentation materials, but the existing site that will receive the hospital is first and foremost within the campus master plan boundary, okay? And it is currently zoned MU4. So by all means, by our analysis in the original plan, the height, the density, et cetera, is all governed by the underlying master plan, but also will comply with the zoning that is in place today. That's our current understanding of that scenario. So we don't anticipate any need for upzoning on that site as it stands, and can pursue it not as a matter of right, but as a further processing project as part of the campus master plan. So that actually plays into the answer to your second question, which relates to the time frame and what happens after the September release, which is, a programming validation and design process, right, to vet the program of architectural requirements that's been generated for the hospital. So that's, not a heavy lift in terms of time frame, but it's a couple, month process for that to come to bear. And then we start design, and as part of the design process, we have, the various phases like schematic, design development, construction documentation, and that all kind of culminates in the zoning hearing, right? The zoning commission hearing for the further processing of that master plan case. And so leading up to that hearing, there's, all of the various sort of mechanisms that are required by law, the notification period, the filing, et cetera. But we, the institution, do have to reach a substantial portion, degree of design clarity, right? In order for us to put cost in place and understand everything that we are putting forth to the community first, and then ultimately to the zoning commission and all of the agencies in the district and everything else. So that process, the design process itself, that schedule will be set as a result of the solicitation, because at different firms have different approaches to design, vertical integration, horizontal integration, studio style, et cetera. And so that may have some implications on when the design will be ready for filing. But our anticipation is that it should be sometime in 2024. So, that's the runway that we've got. And so, obviously once we have filed, there, is a lengthy process that we go through, to make sure that we secure the letters of support that are necessary, and also massage in whatever community concerns may exist, et cetera, into the design so that it's fully baked when we go to the zoning commission. So, very different than, and I won't name names, but some of our peer institutions in the district, rather than start the process with a filing, we generally want to make sure that when we have pushed that button, right, and actually submitted the documents, that we've already met with the local community groups. And we do that in the same fashion that we do with all of our other processes, which is to meet with the civic associations and special interest groups, and then ultimately, go from the grassroots, so to speak, the single member district, et cetera, all the way up to ultimately the ANC, which does have great weight in the process. So I hope that helps in a way, but I think the summary answer is that you should see a lot of activity surrounding that probably in the second half of 2024 to give us the runway we need from a design perspective and a budgeting perspective to, come up with the right measure. And again, I and all of our project team members are aware that, we are proponents of early and often in terms of engagement. Because the sooner that you catch issues in a design process, the earlier and less costly the cures to those issues are. Does that make sense?
Eric, super helpful. Thank you so much. And just a point of clarification, all that is for the new hospital site, not the current hospital
Correct.
site? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then anything with the current hospital site, is being handled basically sequentially to the new.
Right. And the first step in that is the preceding presentation I'm about to give.
Oh, okay. Got it. Cool.
Yep. And I see that Frank has his hand up.
But
Yes.
before you go to Frank, let me just give just a little bit of information for the commissioners that have not dealt with campus plan. All of the hospital stuff is in one of the projects that is on the Georgia Avenue side. It's all within the campus plan. So that goes through a whole different process than all of the projects that we've looked at before that's on the other side of Georgia Avenue that are matter of right developments. required under the campus. They go through all of the things that Derek just said, which then gives the A and C. In this case, it'll be 1B and 1E because it's a multiple site. Much more input into what they're doing so that it's not that the developer just comes and makes a dog and pony show. They're going to come and explain it, all the pieces that they're doing, what it's going to look like, all that kind of stuff, how it's going to affect traffic flow, everything. Before the ANC has a chance to weigh in and support it. And then it has to go in front of the zoning commission itself and to bite at that apple again to talk about what's going on with it. So it's a very different process than what we dealt with the parcels on Georgia Avenue. Sorry, Derek, I just wanted to expound on what you were saying.
Thanks, Mr. Nelson. Frank C., if you still had a question, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Yes, good evening. Thank you, Derek. And Derek, just for the record, I've always mispronounced your name. Can you tell me, are we going by the French or English? And is it Niece Williams? Derek?
Oh, niece, like niece and nephew. Sorry, I was on mute.
Niece Williams.
Like
All
niece and
right.
nephew. Yep, we keep
All
it
right,
easy.
all right. Thank you. A quick question, and then I'll let you guys get on with your business. Thank you for allowing me to make a quick comment. I was wondering about the CVS site, and I'd like to ditto Patrick's remark. You know, this whole area, including the 600 block of T Street, needs activation in order to, help it calm down and or be reused for the problem area that it's become. And so I'd like to ditto Patrick's comments that it'd be great if you guys tore the building down and put up containers, what do you want to call them, shipping containers, and use them for maybe upstart businesses, DC-based businesses for people. I mean, something like that would be a grand activation for that CVS lot and where they could replace the building for. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for consideration on that. My second piece is, can you tell me, I didn't quite understand because I don't know, I was either sleeping or confused. When you said about the development plan, you say you will not try to increase or upzone there because it's too difficult. And that's my first question. And secondly, I understand there's a presidential transition going on at Howard, but will you, what's the general timeline and where are you with the investigation in terms of WMATA and their easement below it? And then lastly, for any rental of the space in the interim, would you consider just 1-year leases so that the 20-year awaited development plan can proceed as soon as possible?
Ooh, all right, that's a complex set of questions. All right, wonder where I start. So I'll start, I guess, at the back end. So the university would be open to obviously short-term leases or conditional leases to answer that question. And then, I'm sorry, Frank, but what was your line before that? You had mentioned the presidential transition, but before that, what was your?
I was curious about whether you were upzoning, or I think you said you weren't going to, or is that still on the table or not determined? Yeah,
so I'll say that I think we're probably 90% of the way there, and probably by the end of this week we should have 100% certainty. But we are 90% of the way there. That the more favorable solution is to go as a matter of right and not try to upzone that site. And it actually works out better for the WMATA issue. And so I guess you also asked about WMATA. I did mention that the development partners we're working with have had several meetings with WMATA in different venues, and we think that we do understand like the technical requirements and some of the costs associated with the bolting over the tunnel that's going to be necessary at that site. So I think that from that perspective, like as much information as we can possibly get has been obtained. And we just need to factor that into the development, which we have done, which is part of why and how we're getting to the conclusion that we do not need to go with for a map amendment on that site, and we can just go as a matter of right. So hopefully by the end of this week, as I said, we should have 100% certainty, but we're pretty close to being certain there.
Then thank you, but just if you would then iterate what the zoning is and how many floors that is, if you would, on both of those, by
Yeah,
right.
So the CVS site is an Arts 2 zone. And that would allow, if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually pulling this up right here. Let's see. Pretty sure that it's either 80 or 90 feet. So it's pretty comparable in terms of height. Let's see here, Arts 1. Arts 2. Oop, 65 feet. And the other zone that was being contemplated was an Arts 3, which also maxes out at 65 feet. So as I was describing earlier, you know, the difference between the two isn't necessarily the height as much as it is the floor to area ratio, as well as the lot occupancy percentage. So again, like with the lot occupancy in particular factors into the vaulting over the tunnel. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
No worries. All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, I will jump into this brief presentation on a map amendment that the university is interested in pursuing. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to start this with the comprehensive plan, which was fairly recently amended in real estate years. And so the image on the left you see is the prior comp plan, which, as you can see, most of the existing campus is just labeled as institutional, which is the blue color there. So the amendments to the plan that are presently in place are shown on the right of the page. And the areas that have changed are outlined in black, and you can see the various color coding that has been added to this area. So the area in particular that we are discussing starts here kind of as Euclid Street intersects Georgia Avenue along to 6th Street. And it runs pretty much along Georgia Avenue, this Georgia Avenue frontage, right? And then goes all the way down just about to the Florida Avenue intersection here, and includes the site of the existing Howard University Hospital, as well as the university's College of Medicine and College of Dentistry. In addition to that, we also have a medical office building and a cancer center on the site. So all of those functions are subject to this whole area, which in the comp plan calls for a change in zoning. So this is from the future land use map. And as you can see, effectively, the intent of the zones that are on the west side of Georgia Avenue here are pulled over across to the east side of Georgia Avenue for the full depth of the block between Georgia and 6th Street. And then further south here, and in tandem with the generalized policy map for the city, which actually calls for a multi-neighborhood center to be present here at the northwest corner of the existing hospital site, as we call it. The density here for residential was actually called out to be high density residential as opposed to medium density residential, like you see over here in what's called the Uptown Arts District, or what the university is calling the Duke District, this area of development. So you can see, like the city, for example, spot zone the former HFA site here as a mix of commercial to match, medium density commercial to match, but high density residential. So you can see here how this all plays out in the comprehensive plan, that basically we're keeping the institutional uses here, and we're adding this comparable use that you see across the street in terms of height and density to these parcels. But this one segment here is being upzoned. So all of this is, a conversation that we have had with the Office of Planning. Now, the conversation we had with them to date was not quite as expansive as is described just a minute ago. We were only really looking at from Berry down to Florida Avenue as the area that we would want to change. And there are a couple of reasons, but one of the key drivers is that this project right here, which is in the master plan called the Fusion Building, is a project that we want to undertake. But the underlying zoning here on this site, and in fact, on the site to the south, also a much larger site, has a vestige of the yesteryear with production, distribution, and repair. So there's a PDR2 zone here and then a PDR3 zone there. And those are industrial zones that don't necessarily line up with the spirit of the development that's supposed to happen in this corridor per the comp plan and some of the small area plans of that comp plan. So, the conversation we had with Office of Planning was supportive of this, and the university being the owner is the entity that would file for all of these. But in further conversations that we had from our community advisory committee meeting, I want to thank all the participants that were there on that, and also some subsequent discussions that we've had. We actually have taken a lot of the advice that the community has given us to heart and decided that it would be more fortuitous for us to fully realize the intent of what the comprehensive plan is called for, as opposed to cutting the situation short at Berry. So as it stands right now, what we are interested in doing is pursuing these 3 areas that I've described for the prescribed zoning change that is called for in the comp plan. And so this is an interpretive process because, again, medium density residential or medium density commercial in this color coded map, they don't necessarily correlate to specific zones, right? So it's open for interpretation, but what we, the university, our land use council, as well as in our discussions with the city, have suggested here is a mix of MU10 and MU9A. And the MU10 is comparable to what's across the street in this west of Georgia Avenue zone that we call the Duke District. And then the MU9A is just slightly higher density than what you see in MU10 and would be most appropriate for this area that fronts onto Georgia Avenue where the hospital is now, for a slightly higher amount of density to support that high density residential stripe that you see there, that dark brown color that you see in there. So that is sort of the long and short of the university's intent. I did take the liberty of just drafting what this area looks like as it pertains to the various ANCs as well as the single member districts. So I did also create a zoom in on that, so it's a little easier for us to see. But so there are, a couple of things that are tied to this. It is a large amount of work for the Office of Planning to have to undertake, as we discussed with them, because there are a lot of parcels of land that are associated with this. But, it is something that is necessary for us to move forward with the Fusion Building project that I mentioned at the intersection of Georgia Avenue and Bryant Street. So that's, sort of a time-sensitive thing for the institution in order to, have the confidence that we're going to get the underlying zoning changes that are necessary to actually, push forward on that project. So, to boil it down, we don't necessarily want to start paying architects and engineers, et cetera, in earnest and taking that risk, right, economically, until we have some assurances the process is moving forward. So that's sort of the urgent call to action surrounding this. But in addition, the large parcel to the south, sort of the boot at the end of the leg here, is where the current hospital sits, but is also subject to a tax abatement that the city granted us through some legislation that, is intended to assist in the funding of the development of the new hospital. And so, that is also an important, factor that as it stands right now, a bunch of industrially zoned land in the middle of the District of Columbia doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of inherent value. So, that's another correlated benefit of this map amendment, is that it will actually further support the intent of that tax abatement and further juice the capital pot, as it were, for the Howard University Hospital's new construction. So with that, I'll pause and see if there are any thoughts, questions, or reactions, because there is one more administrative component to this, which is just the timing of notices and mailers and things of that nature that I do want to discuss on the back end. So I'll pause and see if there are any questions.
Mr. Neese-Williams, you're probably planning to get to it with that administrative portion. I just wanted to ask, though, for the proposed map amendment, Do you have I guess first a zoning commission date for that, or a case number that we can associate with a future resolution, particularly as we start to work more closely with ANC 1B on this?
Oh, you're forcing my hand into the administrative conversation. I'm happy to do it. So here's the formal process, right? Is that before the university can file for this map amendment, we have to provide a 45-day notification period. Now, there are some nuances to days in August not being counted towards that, right? But the overall process is intended for us to send those mailers out to all property owners within a 200-foot radius of any of the impacted parcels, right? And then we have to wait for a period of 45 days before we can actually put our filing forward and actually get that number. So what we're doing now is really the pre-notification to the notification is, and that's why we've been having, meetings leading up to this and daylit this at the CAC meeting to make sure that, none of your constituents got a mailer and we're like, what is this? And started, creating, ripples and waves that aren't necessary in the process. I wanted to be communicative in all of this and make sure that everyone's aware that this is going out and the implications thereof so that you guys can prepare internally for, whatever issues might arise as a result of it, but also, just to be good neighbors, because this is a legal process and, you have to go through it, but the intent of it is to be collaborative. So that's what we're here for.
Sure, appreciate that explanation. Mr. Nelson, I think you had your hand raised and I'll get out of your way.
Derek, two things. One, I want to say thank you for listening to the input that was given to you and moving forward on this concept of uniformity here. I think in the long run, this is going to be a huge win for the university. My second point is just more along the lines of the campus plan again, that the site that the hospital now sits on is still technically part of the campus plan. So it will, once the new hospital gets built and the old hospital gets decommissioned, that will have to go through another process again to be removed from the campus plan to be able to be developed. And that was based on our negotiations that we made when we originally did the campus plan, the latest campus plan, because we were debating whether to take it out now and the pitfalls of what that would cause, angst and all that other stuff. And my last point is just to Brad Gallagher's question about the number. It more than likely will be an addition number to the campus case, but that's the way they usually do it with campus amendments, which is what this will be. So it'll be, I can't remember the number right off the top of my head, but it'll just be that number and then a -1 or something.
Yep. So to go in reverse order, I think it is, there's a letter associated with it. So I mean, the overall governing case number for this master plan, the 2020 master plan, is 20-08. And then you're right, I think there has been an A and a B, and I think there might be a pending C. So there'll be a letter associated with this, but that's the governing. Obviously, once we are able to file.
Commissioner Henderson, over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate you letting me take up a lot of airtime today. Just want to reiterate my support for the upzoning that's proposed in the kind of boot of this design, the majority of which is in my SMD, although a decent portion is in Mr. Footer's and SMD as well. I think density at the site is totally appropriate. I think MU10 is highly consistent with what you see in both the U Street corridor and the Georgia Ave corridor. I'm less familiar with MU9A, but I concentrating density and that neighborhood center use on the western part of that lot, it's spot on. I think that also will address some of the public safety concerns because the more foot traffic and activity we have in the neighborhood is all really I think contributes to some of the exogenous issues that we can talk about later. I would put in a pretty strong plug for maybe like an upfront commitment for some sort of setbacks on the southern and part of the eastern edge, in which you have this site abutting 2-story row houses, many of them in the LeDroit Park Historic District. Just like full disclosure, I own one of those row houses like on U Street that abuts the Howard property, and I'm fully supportive of what you're trying to do here. And I know that there's definitely a interest in Howard's past conversations around acknowledging that where these big development sites touch up against residential communities, thinking about what the space in between looks like. And I think the community would have a lot of ideas for how to do that well. And I think it hopefully would support your goals around density. I think you're going to get a lot of feedback once the notifications hit. So in addition to my plug for setbacks, which by the way, I think can be, I think we can, like, I think the community would be likely to support like the zoning that you just laid out if there was some kind of upfront commitment to setbacks, as opposed to trying to do some like zoning solutions there. And I would just ask if you had a date for the notifications that you think would go out.
Sure thing. So actually, do you want to address
the zoning code, when you have two zones that butt up against one another, especially a high density zone that they're proposing versus the RF1 zone, it's written into the code that if a development is done in a high density zone abutting an RF1 or an RA1 or whatever, that's a lower density, they automatically have to do setbacks. It's part of the code. I mean, it's important to stress that to them that you really want them to do that. But that plus, I would also argue setting the physical building back a little bit further, and then there will be a normal setback of the building itself to address those issues.
I had no idea about that provision. Thanks, Patrick.
Yep, you took the words right out of my mouth. And sorry, my internet cut out for maybe 5-10 seconds. But I will say, that in addition to the zoning regs, the comprehensive plan also contains language about, how high density or higher density interventions should be governed and managed. So in addition to just the zoning regs, which is the law, to support that concept of setbacks, there's also a whole host of sort of urban design guidelines in the comp plan that also
Derek, we did lose you.
I think you cut out again.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point because I know there'll be a lot of conversations about this, but I heard two things, one around the zoning regs having setback requirements for high density, and the second is the comp plan talking about how higher density should be managed. So those are both music to my ears and something I look forward to passing on to my constituents.
Okay, did we lose you, Mr. Neese-Williams? Well, hearing nothing, Howard team, to the extent you can still hear me, wanted to thank you for taking the time to explain your plan to put the property surrounding your campus to better use. Oh, Ms. Edmondson, do you have anything else for us this evening, or?
I don't. It does seem
Okay.
that Derek has left us for a moment.
Okay.
can you guys hear me
Now
okay?
he's back.
I'm sorry, my internet is being wonky. So yeah, I think, to close it out, setbacks, yes. Trying to be close with my words. So here's the thing, is that we want to send this 45-day notification out as early as possible, because again, there are days in August that don't count, and we do have a pending project that is kind of dependent on it. So if you guys are all comfortable, I mean, this is something that we are comfortable telling our lawyers to issue as early as like next week, like Monday.
I don't want to speak for anyone other than ANC 1B01, but since that is, I think, one of the more important constituencies, I would say I will do some interim communication with the constituents between now and Monday, and I have zero concerns with notification coming after that.
It looks like we have a hand raised by community member JJ. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, Derek. This is Jerry Johnson. Can you hear me?
I can. Hey, Jerry.
So a couple quick things with respect to the Wonder Bread Plaza. I would strongly suggest that you enter into conversations with DC Preservation League so you can avoid having them file a landmark nomination on that property, because I guarantee that if you file a raise permit for that property, they will file. And if you pursue a conversation beforehand, you can probably negotiate which aspects of that building could be preserved and not force yourself to have to also negotiate with the Historic Preservation Review Board. Does that make sense?
Jerry, it does. And Jerry, you have given us this counsel in the past on other projects, and we've taken heed. And in fact, I'm happy to say that we have actually already done that. And
Great.
the current design scheme actually calls for the preservation of the Georgia and the Bryant facing facade elements of that building and their incorporation into the new development.
Awesome. And the last thing I have is the MU10 zoning designation allows for by right transfer of development rights within parcels within that zone designation. So you've got some additional flexibility on whether or not you want to move density around within those large parcels that you plan on rezoning. So I look forward to some interesting design work. You know, you've got some nice bones to work with there. So, you know, knock yourself out. But I'm all for it. I'm all for it, and wish you all the best on this.
Thank you, Jerry. And I agree with that. But the one limitation is that the density transfers can only occur within the same square. So it's not just the same zone designation. So it is somewhat limiting by, you know, the archaic surveyors, you know, squares that exist that you're not changing anytime soon. And you know, that I think is actually a good regulation overall, because you can't just be transferring density any old where, right?
Right, which you can do within the arts overlay. But the MU designation, MU10, yeah, the MU10 is probably the best route, and the larger or the higher density of the MU9A. Like Larry, I wasn't familiar with it, but anyway, I'll stop rambling. Best of luck to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Footer, do you have your hand still raised?
Yeah, a quick question, and I apologize. I tuned out for just a second. But Derek, you were mentioning the 45 days and communicating with residents. What was that timeline again?
So, you know, our desire was, you know, like yesterday. So our intent is to, you know, make sure that you guys have sufficient runway to, you know, make sure that your constituents are aware. And what we're looking at is Monday as the date that we would tell our attorneys to put those letters in the mail, send them out. And so from that date, there's a 45-day period within which we are not allowed to file anything. So, and in addition to that, the month of August has days in it that don't count towards that 45-day period. So it in fact actually is a much longer notification period.
Yeah, if it was filed on Monday, what would be the end date? And my line of questioning is more in the, and I can't take credit for this. I believe that Jason Bellows had mentioned this during the meeting that you guys hosted last week, that, you know, it might be best to make sure that you give people all of September to be able to weigh in, just because August is such a prevalent time for people to go on vacation. And we just want to make sure that people have as much time as possible to really absorb the information that you guys sent, and that it doesn't get lost in any mix.
Got it. So to give you a sense there, and my understanding is that the month of August does not count towards that 45-day period. So my understanding is that if we were to mail it out on Monday, that it would be, no days in August, but 45 days from, I think, September 1st would be the soonest we could file that. And that might give me a week or two of wiggle room on that. And I will definitely confirm that with our attorneys. They're actually running that down and circle back with you guys to make sure you have the definitive date that would result in.
Awesome. That makes sense. Thank you.
I also believe, Brian, if I'm remembering correctly, because they changed some of the regulations on the 45-day rule. I have to pull my stuff out and look at it, but I believe that if the vendor does a 45-day notice and the ANC asks for an additional time frame, that 45 days will be extended at the request of the ANC. So if what Derek is saying, that it goes out, it gets mailed on Monday and it doesn't start until September, and that's fine. If it goes out on Monday and it starts ticking on Tuesday, then the ANC can say, we want additional time, specifically based on your point of notification of the community.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. That's really helpful information.
All right, do we have any other final questions or comments for the Howard University team? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Neese-Williams, Ms. Edmondson, thanks as always for taking the time to come tell us about your exciting plans for your campus and the area surrounding it. Always appreciate hearing from you, and we'll look forward to working with you on this plan going forward. Likewise, ANC 1B, Commissioner Henderhan, we'll look forward to working with you as well. Our neighbors to the south, who we don't get enough opportunities to collaborate with, so looking forward to it.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.
Bye-bye.
Pleasures all on this side. Thank you. All right, moving on to official business. We have 3 Board of Zoning Adjustment cases on our agenda this evening, arranged by order of their scheduled BZA hearing date. The first case is BZA case 20957. That's 727 Irving Street Northwest. The applicant here is Peter Akinsanya. Do we have Mr. Akinsanya or another representative on this case here? If so, please virtually raise your hand or dial *9 so we can elevate you to panelist status.
I am not seeing anyone.
Neither am I. Thanks, Commissioner Ray. Okay, noted. In the interest of time, I will move on, but if we are mistaken and there's a representative on 727 Irving, please do let us know as soon as possible. The next case we have is case number 20957. That's with regard to 722 Kenyon Street Northwest. I believe I've seen both Adam Crane and Jide Alade here. So we'll elevate you both to panelist status and we'll hand the stage over to you as soon as that change takes effect. Thanks for being with me tonight.
Can I ask you a question, Brad?
Sure.
727 Irving, when is their case?
Yeah, so yes, you see the sense of urgency here, Mr. Nelson. Yeah, that is October 4th.
Okay, so then that means if they're not here tonight and we don't do something tonight, we're kind of SOL, because on September, you're not going to be able to do anything in time for the meeting in October.
Yeah, I believe that's the technical term. Yeah. I will get in additional contact with the applicants offline and see what we can.
To the Commissioner Gallagher's point, I would say there was a lot of back and forth about the date tonight, where we have given them 2 months ago that this was going to be the date. I'm not sure what has happened that they're not here. So we expected them, but it didn't happen.
Well, I'm going to make a recommendation just purely on my gut here. Since they were asked to come 2 months ago and they haven't showed up tonight, I would recommend that this committee recommend to the full ANC that it is in opposition for this application, which will give us more time to let them go to the BZA board if they need to and extend their time frame. If we don't weigh in on something, then we're kind of out in left field.
Well, looking at the timeframe, this committee, let's see, we're scheduled to meet on September 13th, and then the next ANC meeting is September 27th. So I think that actually by the skin of their teeth, I think this puts October 4th. I think
27th, and then their hearing is when?
the 4th. So actually the exact 7 days in advance.
Oh, that's really close. I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
by your chinny chin chin, you know?
Well, either way, to your point, Pat, I mean, if you want to make the motion, you can make the motion, but I would say we do have the opportunity to make that same vote. You can make that same motion next month if we don't hear again.
Well, that's fine. I'm just trying to put it out there. I mean, we don't have to do it tonight. If they show up next month and we can do it, fine, but I just don't want the ANC not to get on record. And
I agree with you. And I would have agreed with your motion if we had.
I mean, we could motion that tonight, and then if they show up next week, cancel it. I just want to make sure that the ANC gets covered. That's the only point that I'm trying to make.
If I could, before you make the motion, Patrick, and not to debate it here, but the ANC is not going to be able to act on any motion tonight until September, which means we're going to have one more committee meeting before the ANC can even do anything on tonight's topic.
That's fine. That's fine.
So we can wait
I just-
until, yeah,
I
but
just
keep
didn't want it to
keep
slide by.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the motion. We can table it so it's up for consideration. We can do it at the next meeting, or if you just want to remember it, we can do it.
No, I'll take your guidance on that. I didn't know the timing of the dates since I don't keep a calendar that way. So I will defer to, if they don't show up next month, then we will do what I'm suggesting tonight, next month. I'm fine with that.
Okay, unless there are any other questions or comments, and thanks, Mr. Nelson, for keeping us honest on this case. But it sounds like since we do have another month on the 727 Irving, I'll propose that we move on to 722 Kenyon. And I will note Mr. Alade and Mr. Crane, who are the applicant and representing the applicant on these cases, or on this case, they also are on the same roles for 745 Irving. That's BZA case 20971. So I think for the rest of the evening, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that. I'll do a screen share. See if I can pull this up. My
Adam,
name's
we're not hearing
Crane.
you. I see your lips moving and you're not
One
muted,
second.
but we've probably eaten up the battery in your
No,
headphones.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. The matter of me choosing the correct microphone. My name's Adam Crane. I'm the architect with Two Plies. Just a minor correction. The second project we'll be presenting is 745 Kenyon, not Irving. So they're both on Kenyon Street.
My apologies. We tend to have a pattern here at this committee where all the cases are on the same block in a given month. So apologies for that, and I'll make that correction.
It happens in clusters, doesn't it?
It seems to, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
please continue.
Sure. So we're here to present 722 Kenyon Street. We're in line for the BZA for a special exception for a 3-unit conversion. As a general overview, in the RF1 zone, which this is in, if a lot has 2,700 square feet, which is 900 square foot per unit, it has the ability to go before the BZA for a special exception for a 3rd unit, where 2 units is allowed by right. So that's what's brought us here today. Here's a little overview of where 722 is, a little east of Sherman on Kenyon Street. Here's our proposed site plan. I'm going to annotate this and sketch over a little bit just to help clarify things. Sometimes it gets messy, I'm sorry. The existing building mass kind of comes up just about in line with these other two, as you see right here. So we're proposing a bit of a rear addition to that. And I'll call this the front mass. This front mass is going to house 2 units. We're proposing a 3rd unit that's going to be past a courtyard with an enclosed connector here. That'll sit in the rear yard there with 2 parking spaces at rear. we found this setup provides a lot of windows for all the units, makes them very nicely livable as to trying sticking everything together without the courtyard. And we found on other projects around town that we've seen do this, we've seen good feedback on the buyers when we've done walkthroughs as far as having that private courtyard set back from the street. They become pretty desirable units. Here's a 3D perspective. This is looking from the front with that third floor addition, that connector slightly visible here, and that third unit that'll be in the back. This is kind of a rear perspective here, looking down into that courtyard and that connector, which will open up into the shared green space in the middle, which we're calling the courtyard. You'll see in here that we're proposing roof decks for the upper units to give them some outdoor space, whereas the green in the courtyard might be reserved or more used by the lower level unit. Some additional perspectives here. And just a quick overview of our proposed layouts here. Really kind of got them color coordinated here. So I guess the front mass in the lower level, which would kind of be this pink color here, we've got a 3-bedroom unit, which I'll call unit 1. Above that, we have another 3-bedroom unit in blue, which I'll call unit 2. This one would have the roof deck access there. And then unit 3 is the green one that's over 4 levels, which is kind of its own little stack there, which is a 4-bedroom. Again, accessed by this breezeway or corridor, which also provides access from the parking all the way through to the front via the cellar level. These are just a little more detailed floor plans. This is the BZA drawing, so we provide a lot of information, even though some of it's redundant. Elevations, kind of a section. You can kind of see the outline of the existing building there and the addition that we're proposing. Another color coordinated section here to clarify things, unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, and the courtyard there. That's a pretty quick overview there. Happy to answer any questions or go over any details that people might have, but again, we're looking at the 3-unit special exception for this, so happy to have any feedback.
How many units you talking about again? Just tell me.
3.
How many?
3. So this is again, this zone RF1 allows 2 by right, but with these larger lots, this is 145 feet deep. So a lot of these houses have gigantic backyards. And so that's the square footage on these lots gets a little larger than some of the other lots you see in the neighborhood. So that's where the provisions within the RF1 zone, once you have 900 square feet of unit or square foot of lot per unit, then you start getting the territory where you can go after a special exception. So that's where this one qualifies for.
And how many parking spaces?
We have 2 parking spaces.
All right.
I think I saw Commissioner Ray's up.
Yeah, thank you. I'll jump in. So the first, it's more of a comment, I guess, than it is a question. I'm assuming Office of Plan, you haven't necessarily shown this yet to Office of Planning and gotten their feedback yet. Is that true?
We typically start seeing feedback on our BZA cases a couple weeks in advance of the BZA date. Haven't gotten anything yet.
Okay. The thing that I would give you a heads up on, because I've seen this across the street with a project that Jason Cohen and Adam and Michael Cross was the architect on, that the addition, putting the balconies on the addition seems to now, not balconies, the roof deck, seems to be getting the Office of Planning's attention. I'm not entirely sure why, but they had them actually remove all of the roof deck from that project. Now, I'm not sure why, and I never got a chance to talk to them about it, but I'm not sure why they asked them to remove all of the roof decks, because you should be allowed to put the roof deck on the by right portions. But if that becomes an issue, would you just remove them if the Office of Planning has a problem?
That would be a new one to me. And I haven't seen that on any other projects. I do know that typically zoning, it's a question of railing versus parapet.
Yeah.
And railings require a 1-to-1 setback, which you'll see we have here on the front and back, and parapets do not require that. So I don't know if that's what came into play. I'm not familiar with that project. But I don't know anything that would prevent a roof deck. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
and again, I'm not saying that I have a problem with it per se. I
Yeah.
do think that their argument tends to be one of privacy, because you're adding people out on the balconies, basically looking down on the projects onto what is the additional property, not the, this you're getting more than the 10 feet rule. And so
Yeah.
that additional space, they start to look at as, should you put a rooftop balcony? And if they do, you guys can work it out. I don't necessarily have a feeling for it either way. I would push back on them if they did and say you should at least be allowed to put a roof deck on the by right portion of the building.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
We'll
Do you
see
know
what
if
it
that
is.
was a balcony or a roof deck?
It was a
that
roof
they-
deck, and I keep
It was a roof deck.
switching it back. and forth.
Interesting.
Yeah, because when we saw the project, the entire project, like you have it here, had a roof deck on it, and when it got to
Yeah.
the BZA, it was all gone. So
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see what they say. I wouldn't know what would require that. But also I, in my experience, every couple of months when we have a BZA case, the opinions change and they change over time. So the requirements and, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. Every couple of months, people got to mix it up. So we'll see what the flavor of the quarter is.
yes, and who you get from the zoning commission, that's the extra member. And then the only other thing I would say, now this particular block, I'm sure you're aware, a lot of the houses have changed hands in the past couple of years. But have you done any outreach to the neighbors on the east and west to show them this project and kind of get their feedback, or what outreach have you done so far?
I will let Jade, who is the owner's rep here, discuss that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes. So yes, we have done quite a bit of feedback, gotten quite a bit of feedback from the immediate neighbors. So this is 722 Kenyon. I have spoken with the owner of 724 Kenyon and shared the plans in detail with him, and he is supportive of this project. 726 is a building that was recently redeveloped. It's on the market for sale right now, 2 units with the roof deck. And on 720 Kenyon, which is on the other side, on the west side, I was actually involved in a development group that developed that property, which is currently on the market. It's a 2 unit, it has a roof deck. And for the west is 718 Kenyon, which is owned by Jason Cohen. I have had discussions with him, and he is also supportive of this project. So basically, 2 houses or 2 lots to the left and right are generally supportive of this development plan.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize that Jason Cohen owned that piece of property as well. So I think there might only be 2 owners on the whole block when it's all said and done. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
I think Mr. Nelson, you were next.
So I have just a couple of comments. As it pertains to the roof deck, I would advocate that you take down the solid wall and put up the open railing and set it back. I think that is probably going to be more palatable to zoning than what you're proposing here. My experience has been that it kind of softens the blow of the point that of having people come right up to the parapet and making noise and causing problems. It's a trivial kind of thing, but I think it might be much more acceptable to the zoning than what you're proposing. So versus losing it totally, that would be my suggestion to you.
Understood.
My next point is, what if anything is your plan for the 2 trees that are in the budding yard that obviously when you do this construction are gonna either have to be removed or cut down or trimmed or whatever? Do you have a plan to replace them? I know in the District of Columbia, when you remove a tree, you have to put a tree somewhere. So have you spoken to that neighbor to say, we'll put a new tree in, or what is your plan?
So yes, we have spoken to the neighbor, and there are a few trees back there. The largest of them is on 724, and it has a crown that overhangs all the way onto 722. And we'll just be doing some light trimming of that. So we won't be taking that tree down. We're going to have some tree doctors come and do a little bit of trimming of that tree. And then further closer to the buildings, there are a couple of small trees which don't meet any type of protected designation. Their diameters are pretty small, and they are not of any significant species. I believe they are actually invasive species. So those two trees will be removed. There is one tree that still not large enough to be protected, but we intend to trim. And that tree would be where the corridor, that the covered corridor that's linking the front and the back building, that's where that tree is located. So we won't be taking that tree out, but we'll just be trimming some of it, because the crown will go above the corridor, and the corridor is not going, it's not going below grade, basically. So the root structure should still be intact.
Okay. My next question is, based on the drawings that are on the zoning site, I don't see anywhere that you planned for trash storage.
I think as of now, we'll be including trash kind of in this area between parking and the stairs down. If that won't fit, we can shrink this parking space a little bit down to a compact size to allow that a little more trash area.
Okay. And then my last comment is to reaffirm what Michael said about contacting the neighbors. Based on my experience prior to joining this new ANC, in the last ANC that I was at, we required that developers get some kind of written confirmation from the neighbors. And I say that because there's been cases in the past where developers or owners have come before the committee and said, oh yeah, we talked to the neighbors. And then we get at the last minute, the neighbors calling up and saying, what the hell's going on over here? No one has said anything to anyone. So I'm not taking anything as a negative that you didn't talk to them, but it would be helpful if we get some kind of confirmation, either an email or a letter that you type up and let them sign, or something that says, yes, we talked to you, we showed you the plans, you're okay with what we're doing, as a comfort level for the committee to know that you've done your outreach and we're doing our due diligence to cover the neighbors that are abutting. That is all of my comments.
Commissioner Fritter, you had your hand up earlier. I don't think it's still up. Do you still have a question or comment?
Nope, they answered it. Thank you.
I'm happy to go ahead and make a motion because I don't see any other hands, if that's okay.
Before you make a motion,
Oh, sorry.
I do have, if I can, I do have a couple of questions. One, is this rental or condos? What kind of units are you proposing?
Today you're doing condos here, right?
Yeah, condos. These are condos.
So these are 3 condos you're proposing.
That's correct.
And then I'm not quite clear on your circulation, your shotgun circulation. You can enter your rear unit via Kenyon Street from the street side and go straight back to the rear unit. Is that what happened?
We've got, here, I'll give you kind of a pathway through here. I recognize it's a little confusing. So basically what we're called the common corridor, this breezeway, it's accessed via the cellar through the front mass here. And as we get towards coming up in the courtyard, there's a stair there. We see where it says up, and that'll bring you up to the first floor here and at grade in that courtyard, and that'll continue out to the back. So if you were to come from the parking in, you'd be at first floor, past the courtyard, and you go down to the cellar and all the way through.
And if you enter from Kenyon Street, you go down and then back up.
Well, and I'm not trying to make things confusing, but there's two entrances from Kenyon. One is at the cellar here for that shared courtyard, which is really what I would say would be the entranceway for the rear unit to come in.
Right.
And if you go up to the front porch, there's that shared entranceway, which will go to unit 1 and unit 2, which are in the
Right.
front mass.
Right. Yeah,
So-
you have a very interesting circulation going on. And then my last comment is your front facade. You're saving portion of that front facade, and then you're adding that third story. It seems to be a bit awkward. To
Yeah,
me. That's an
well, I'll
awkward
be
juxt-
honest, the zoning
juxtaposition.
code makes it a little awkward, and here's why. Zoning has provisions because they want to, what's important to them, and I agree with this, is they want to maintain the existing character of the street. So this little roof here, they want to maintain that. We could propose tearing that off and modifying it. But then we'd be changing, the way it interacts and ties into these other buildings. And that would be an additional relief that we'd have to go for the BZA. I think it's kind of nice to keep that. But when you keep that, they've got a rear setback that you're supposed to maintain 3 feet from the back side of that. So that creates this situation here, and it's kind of a zoning designs it case here. And you'll see this, in the third floor additions you've seen with the 2 unit conversions all around the neighborhood. So that's why you get this mass that's kind of set back. If I had it my way without the relief, I think we could do a nice extension of the roof here and make something nice, but then we're getting to another portion of relief with zoning, and it complicates things. So that's why
Yeah.
that is the way it is.
Yeah, okay, I'd like your rationale, but it's awkward.
I agree.
And that 3 feet separation is intended to be a balcony, what is that intended to be?
It's kind of a walkout terrace. That's usually, let me pull up the plan there. So it's kind of on the third floor there. It's a bit of a terrace there, but yeah, you see, it's kind of a walkout space behind there. It's odd. We've tried to design around it, but it ends up just kind of remaining odd. But that's the zoning code, keeping those architectural rooftop elements at the front.
Right, but you don't have access to, do you have access to it?
Well, it would really be kind of, I guess, we don't have it shown as like a walkout terrace, but it's more of like oh no, there's a fire, let me egress onto this and jump over the rooftop parapet. That's kind of what it is. We don't have this really shown as a, I guess what you call it, like a terrace. Let me find that rendering. Yeah, I mean, so those are actually windows, not doors. But
Yeah, that seems like an
it's-
easy modification, but
yeah, it is. But what and to get technical, I'm sorry, but as these things get built, it becomes a matter of inches. Some zoning, depending
I
on
see.
the flavor of the month and how
I
they're
see.
reviewing. Sometimes they'll let us modify this, or they used to become an actual walkout terrace. Other
Right.
times the reviewer decides, we want this is integral and important to the roof, which I don't believe it is. So we've got to show this portion here. And then
I
we've got to
see.
do our waterproofing thing there. So
I
it's a
see.
technicality that we have to deal with.
I see, okay, thanks.
Sure.
Mr. Crane, you didn't, might or might not have realized that you are being grilled by the chair of Howard University's Department of Architecture in disguise. So
I'm happy to be grilled by anyone. It just makes me better.
excellent. Commissioner Footer, I think you're up next.
Yeah, that's interesting that the walkway or the pass through is in the cellar level. What's the rationale? I don't disagree. it's
On
just
previous
interesting to
projects,
hear what-
zoning said that's the way it has to be. Trust me,
Interesting.
yeah,
Oh.
this, we'll call this a, what do they call this? A hop back. I know there was the pop up and the hop back. I forget what Prince of Petworth called this at one point, but there's all sorts of creative names for it. So on projects, years ago, when we'll call this a courtyard scheme, not a hop back, when this first started popping up and became something that was used in the neighborhoods here in the RF1, this was the corridor, right? The first floor makes the most sense. It's clean, one entry. At some point in the past, the zoning said we had to go through the cellar. And that's kind of where things got shifted. One thing I find nice about doing this is that it separates the I guess the main common entry point for these two units from what would be the main entry point for the rear. And it gives width wise, this gives the living and kitchen area a couple more feet to breathe, as opposed to if you had this corridor extending through it. And I think where we locate this kitchen and living room, or the common areas, it's kind of nice here, a little elevated on the first floor, but right open to the courtyard. So I think this works better for this unit, especially, is to give a little more space where people will be spending time during the day with access to the courtyard and views to the courtyard without losing about 4 feet in width to that breezeway. So I think it ups the quality of that a little bit.
Yeah, it seems to also open up the space on the lower level too. Is that a door that goes from the bedroom out into I guess a small walkway or a small patio front areaway?
So we've got a slider here with a little areaway. So it's it's more than a window well. You can put a plant there. You can put a chair there. Little reading space. Back here we have a window well, which is 3 feet as opposed to our typical areaways are 5 feet. So this is really an egress window well, and the main purpose of us not doing an area back there is to maximize the courtyard space above, so we're not eating too much up with below grade concrete.
Awesome, thanks.
I'm sorry, I do have something else because I can't believe I didn't think to ask this, but have you done any shadow studies on the, because this is you are having to ask for more than the 10-foot rule, so did you do shadow studies on this as well?
We haven't, but we can put that together.
I would put that together because I think they're gonna, the BZA will certainly ask for them. I'll make that as part of the motion. You can send it.
Yeah. Sure.
I have one final question too, which I didn't think of before. The courtyard, is that going to be a permeable paver system or just concrete?
It's gonna be grass.
Grass, real grass. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's unusual.
Well, we think of it kind of as a private yard that can be shared between all the units. You can see how they've kind of all got access to it. So it's we just wanted something nice there. We wanted a yard that's not open to the street and not connected to an alley, so it's safe and enclosed. Just a little happy space.
What about the carport?
The carport's going to be permeable pavers.
Is that going to be hooked up to the drainage system from the house?
It depends. I don't think it's going to require us to do that. I think we'd need like an infiltration test and some complicated civil stuff if we were going to do that to see if it's required. Typically, the infiltration rate is what determines if you got to hook it up to that. But I'll talk to civil and see how. It
depends on how many square feet that is, and like you said, what it does. Because I have that on my house, and my whole entire, both my house roof and my garage roof all into the system, and it takes 100% of the water.
Mm-hmm.
All right, does anyone else have any questions or comments for the presenters? Mr. Nelson, I do take your comment about the neighbors' inputs. I guess just thinking in the interest of keeping this moving forward, would it logistically, would it make sense should this committee pass recommend the ANC pass a resolution of support, would it make sense that resolution be predicated upon receiving notification that the neighbors are not in opposition before that, or do you, or would we think that we would need to hold off on proceeding until we hear from the neighbors? And Commissioner Ray, is your hand raised?
Well, yeah, because I was exactly where you are, which is that, a motion that I would have put forward would certainly say that we are in support of the application, with the caveat that we expect to have them reach out to the neighbors to see if they can receive. I mean, they may not get it, so I don't think we can require or should require that they have to get support from the immediate neighbors. But if they, they should take the extra effort to try and get written notice to us before the ANC meeting. I would also then add as well that we would add the caveat that they should do shadow studies before the ANC meeting so that we can see that those are at least done. And we can consider that in our final vote at the ANC. But I would be comfortable, with this committee supporting it tonight with those two caveats, but we'll see where we are. Thanks.
Second the motion.
Michael, can I suggest that whatever is in the motion is, rather than send it to the committee that's not going to be here unless the commission wants to see it, that they transmit something to the BZA to put it in the record, the file of the record, versus have to submit it to the committee when we're not going to see. I'm fine with voting tonight, but I agree that we should at least put it in our recommendation to that they submit something to the BZA.
I like that, and would make that change to the motion. Thank you.
Do we get notification of any updates to the application?
If you have to sign up with ISIS to get notified on that, but I mean, Adam can certainly notice, the ANC that he's done this to the.
Yeah, we'll be distributing updated plans anytime we do it.
Awesome.
And Commissioner Footer, I will note that the chair of this committee has signed up for updates on all cases in the entirety of ANC 1E. So I get a lot of emails about these things, and we'll certainly let the group know as I get anything substantive on this and other cases.
I second the motion with the friendly amendment.
Okay, the motion is seconded. All those actually. Commissioner Ray, was yours was
I
that
think
a
you should
motion?
restate the motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do. So I make a motion that we are in support of this application with the understanding that the applicant will attempt to notify again that the neighbors have seen these plans and that they are in support, and that they would submit that support in writing to the BZA record, and that they will also do shadow studies of the project and submit those plans into the record as well.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Ray.
Second.
And seconded. Okay, all those committee members voting in favor, please raise your hand or vocalize aye.
Aye.
Committee members opposed, please raise your hand or vocalize nay. And any committee members abstaining, please visually or verbally indicate.
I abstain.
Thank you, Professor Grant. So on a vote of 6-0 to 1, this committee so votes, and we'll transmit this statement of support for a resolution to the full ANC to be voted on in the September 27th ANC meeting. Unless there are any final questions or comments, we can, with the same cast of characters, I think, move on to the next case. That is 20971. And pardon me, my earlier faux pas on the street name. This is 745 Kenyon Street Northwest.
We're taking a very long journey across the street. Let me open that one up. And so I know people have sleep and lives to get to, and we're going on 2 hours of this meeting. So I'll be quick here. A lot of it's going to be very similar to what we did on the last one. This one, existing site plan, these houses, bit of a mirror here, kind of you don't see this too much around the neighborhood, but it's kind of got an odd bump in, little shed in the back that we plan to remove. This one is a very similar setup to what we're showing. as far as a mass in front, a courtyard in the middle, and then a unit in the back. I would note that this lot is a little wider, which allows us to show the trash there. I know that question is going to come up. The other one I think was a 20-foot lot, but this is 25. We got 2 parking spaces and the trash back there. We're proposing to fill in that little courtyard there, just to kind of square off the building there. We're doing a little bit different of a layout here at the front. The other was kind of what we call a 2/2. We'll call this one front and back. And so I guess you can think in terms of this. Where's my color coded section here? That, you know, this is unit 1, unit 2, unit 3. And again, that courtyard there. You know, we're showing on this one, we're showing the breezeway on the first floor going all the way through. Again, you know, with not sure how zoning and what their current determination is, we might end up finding that with OP in the BZA case, we might end up finding that during the permit process, but this seemed to work a little better for our plans on this one. This one, you know, as we mentioned, we've got the kitchen and living taking up the first floor of all the units, you know, with nice views and into the courtyard there and for the green space. Kind of shows how the bedrooms are laid out. Got 2 bedrooms at the cellar level all the way through. And then 2 bedrooms at the second floor there. Then 3rd floor, kind of the main bedroom with a larger bedroom there. I think we're proposing roof decks here that would be accessed by that central stair. So this is a little bit different layout, same kind of concept, but you know, overall, again, it's that courtyard scheme. So I'm sure a lot of the concerns and questions would apply to this, but if there's anything different, I'm happy to talk about those.
Well, Pat beat me, so he can go first.
Hey, Pat.
I was quick on the draw, huh? So I have just a couple comments. One is I'm glad to see that you explained the trash cans, because that was going to be my question. I saw it on the plat, so I was going to congratulate you for doing that. I see that you're changing the front, as you explained, to fill in that little gap. So I will restate the same issue that we brought up before, that I think it's really important that you get the abutting neighbor that's going to have that courtyard filled in. Confirm that they're okay with that, because that's going to change the whole difference of how their front of their house looks, and it might cause issue for them. I will restate again my concern about the roof deck being set back and put a railing on it versus solid wall. And then my last comment is that I noticed in your statement of what you're doing, that you're not concerned about the front because there's no architectural elements, which I will disagree a little bit, because there is a little bit of an architectural element on the current building, and you're claiming you don't need to do anything with it. So I'm just suggesting that if you move the front back to the 3 foot and put in a railing, that you do something across the top of the facade, some kind of element that is either a fascia board or something that makes it a little bit more than just a flat all the way from the top of the house down to the street.
Sure. And I do want to clarify, thank you for pointing that out and also being so detailed. The reason I brought that up in the statement, it's an architectural rooftop element. So, and I'll just point you to the previous one we looked at. What zone, and this is a result of the way the zoning code is written. They call these roofs and you know, these dormers architectural rooftop elements on
Right.
745.
And I understand that. I'm well versed
Okay.
in that whole clause, and I'm not arguing that point. There is a big difference between that one and this one. but is a bit of a cornice on the current building, and all I'm asking is that you put something up there that is an accent, just to make it look nice. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
I think it's a great idea. Something there. Yeah. I think we can accommodate that.
And then, like I said, decide whether or not you want to have the solid wall or push that back. Because based on like what Michael said, you may end up losing all of that if you don't decide to do that. That's up to you. I'm not going to push that issue, but
yeah,
those are my comments.
I'll go ahead and jump right in. I would double check this one because I believe that we heard the case of your immediate next door neighbor who is Jason Cohen. And that there won't be, they're also getting rid of this sort of courtyard, not courtyard. I don't know what we're calling the front, a little indention. Maybe Dr. Grant could give you a better word to use. I believe their project. So what I would ask you to do is double check me on this, because I was just trying to find it myself and I'm having a hard time. But double check that there isn't a BZA case for the immediate next door. And I would change your plans to show
this one here?
Yes.
Okay.
I would double check, and I could be wrong because I believe there are 2 properties that might have this little thing to them on that block. But if it isn't, you don't have to bother, but it might be helpful though to see how the building is supposed to look. How will the building next door look once it's done?
Yep.
Because because your courtyard right now lines up with the back and it's going to let light through. I'm not so sure that is going to be the case. And I don't know that it matters, because if it doesn't line up, then maybe you don't have to have the courtyard. But I would look at that, because he might have all of the room at the back. I forget what he might have had 2 light wells coming through, because he might be doing 3 townhouses that are connected by a corridor. I think that might have been how they were handling it, but I don't remember it exactly, and I couldn't bring it up while we were chatting here.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Can we go back to the facade again then? And what's the material at the front?
Probably going to be hardy panels and hardy planks, some kind of I don't think we've
here I'll say Jason was really good about using brick, and so I would at least make the pitch that perhaps the front facade could be a shallow brick kind of material, just again to be a little more in line with what everybody else. I mean, I know how architects love to do what everybody else is doing, but it is kind of the way things have been going on that block, and so and I'll make, to what Patrick's point, I don't love that you've got the parapet all the way to the front. If you could set that back, I think, because it just kind of makes it look extra tall, and it's not. It's just the parapet. So if there was something you could do with the front of that a little, would be helpful.
Sure.
And if you're going to use brick, which I didn't bring that up, I'm glad Michael did. If you're going to use brick, that also gives you the opportunity to make the top 2 layers offset, and that answers my issue.
To make you mean like kind of like a soldier course, or kind of a
exactly
above the second floor? Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I ask? I'm looking at a image of the current house. What is it right now? What is that texture, sandy looking?
I think it's all
like
kind of
form stone or stucco. I think.
Stucco, yeah. Those would be my comments. But and if you look, these are suggestions to you, but I'd like I earlier did. I think any motion tonight might be that we'd love to see how you kind of take these suggestions, because we do have another meeting before the next one. So in that,
what's the date of that?
What's the date of our next meeting?
Yeah,
it's September 13th.
Thank you.
So could I correctly plan on coming back and showing you guys some stuff?
Exactly. We can put you up front, and we'll see if, I mean, if you want to tell us that you can't do it, then you can tell us you can't do it. But you know where we are.
And your BZA date is still November 1st. Are we tracking that?
This one
correctly?
is November 1st.
Okay, so that should give us enough time for both this committee and the full ANC. I mean, actually, yeah, more than enough time if we do decide to go that route.
And I just, sorry.
Michael, are you finished?
Yeah, I was only gonna, I'm sorry. So Adam, just again, with those rooftop decks, the mayor, because like I said, the building next door to yours was the one I was thinking of. Again, if I got the right house, where they were, you know, which now shows you that they should have just let the decks be there, because then you could have had them and then it would all be fine. But if you want to think about the same kind of treatment you did across the street with these, I thought that was better. So thank you. That's it. Sorry, Dr. Grant.
Dr. Grant, real quick, sister, before you jump in, oh my God, I'm so sorry, Michael. Oh my God, I just blanked on your name. I think I found the house you're looking for. I think it's 731 Kenyon.
Oh, well, then it's the other house that, okay, my fault. There are two properties that have that same indentation to them, so.
And 731 looks like it's new development and it does not have that space filled in.
Oh, well, it wouldn't be.
Still cut out.
No. Like I said, this would be a BZA case we heard recently, so it certainly wouldn't be done yet.
If it's helpful. Sorry, Dr. Grant, please.
No problem. I just want to add on that I agree with the comments about the front facade, the articulation and the materials. I think unit masonry, brick of some type and some pattern might be a good alternative, a good choice to look at least to explore if you haven't already.
Okay.
And articulate somehow, and maybe according to what Pat is saying and others, articulate that front facade might be a worthy exploration. It appears that you have a bathroom for each bedroom, which suggests that this might be a shared, that somehow if you're renting these, you're renting them to several people, or if you're selling these, that it seems like a shared. Is that your intention?
No, the intention is to sell these as condos.
Right, but it's designed where you can have roommates or shared mates somehow. I say that as positive in terms of affordability. It's getting increasingly hard for one person to purchase property, but maybe a couple of non-related people can purchase property and be affordable. And so I'm thinking of it, I'm trying to think of this as a positive, having a bathroom for every bedroom. Generally suggests that, and especially in a college neighborhood. So I just wanted to try to see where you're coming from. I was hoping you would talk about affordability, but I will. And then lastly, I think you handled the circulation much better than you did in your previous project. I'm in favor of how you're handling this circulation. I would try to look at your previous project and do something similarly.
Sure. Thank you for your comments.
Any other questions or comments from committee members? Okay, just want to maybe take the pulse of the group. Do we feel that we are in a position to make a motion this evening, or would we like to invite the applicant to come back next month?
I would suggest that they come back, since we've asked for a couple of changes and there is plenty of time for them to come back and show us what they've changed and show us the contact with neighbors and all that stuff. And then we'll have the whole package to be able to vote on. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I would second Pat's thing as well, and say we can table for tonight with the they have our feedback, and they can decide what of that feedback they can try to incorporate or not incorporate, and let us know what their decision is. But in the same, I would make the same caveat on the outreach to the neighbors too, is that if you can get any kind of written thing from them in the meantime, that would also be very helpful.
Great, thank you.
Applicants, do you think, I mean, without committing per se, does September 13th, do you think you probably would be able to?
Not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great. In that case, are any committee members opposed to that course of action? Okay, I think I don't think we need to take a vote since it's not actually a binding decision, right? So unless I'm mistaken. So I think this concludes our official business for this evening, unless there's anything else anyone has for us.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you very much for attending this evening, to both of you. So at this point, I'd like to motion by unanimous consent to adjourn for this evening, unless there are any objections.
Brad, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure, yeah, of course.
What is the process going forward with, I see you have on the agenda, APCA licenses, but how is this commission going to handle, or how are we as a committee going to handle this? Because there are, I mean, I just got notification, and I think Brian's probably gotten some feedback already from Josh on this, but there's been notification of a couple of bars that are put in applications for stuff, and I just want to know how that's gonna work, and are we gonna ask people to come in even though some of it is pretty standard stuff, or how is that gonna happen since we've not done any of that in the past, and I want to make sure we understand what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll maybe offer the way I understood it, but if Commissioner Footer, speaking on behalf of the larger ANC, also wanted to weigh in, I would welcome that. But yeah, I think my understanding was that the ANC at times might ask this committee to take up ABCA related matters, but maybe not every single ABCA renewal that comes up in our ANC. Commissioner Footer, is that kind of how you envisioned it as well, or?
Yeah, I would say that it's at the discretion of the impacted SMD. So I know in 1B, they like everything goes to their APCA committee, and it's one of their common practices to immediately protest every single thing in order to provide greater standing or opportunity to speak, things of that nature. And that's not going to be our practice. And so what ends up happening right now is that when we get notification of a license, we send it immediately to the individual impacted SMD. It's their responsibility to begin the process of reaching out to the business owner and their community in order to have a dialogue. If there's further dialogue that is needed and an opportunity for the community to come in and commit testimony, whatever the case may be, this is the space that we would do that. But it really is at the leadership of the individual impacted SMD.
So can I just make a suggestion just for, and you don't have to take it if you don't want to, but
Oh, that's a suggestion.
is there some way that the ANC could on the website post licenses that are coming up so that the community has a way of looking at it? Because, and I'm just saying this for transparency, Brian, I'm not even a named commissioner, and I'm getting phone calls from my neighbors about what's going on with the ANC. How come they haven't responded to this and blah, 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 blah. So rather than having to call you or talk to Josh every time this comes up, if the ANC is proactive in putting them online and saying, here's the applicants that have applied or are renewing. If you have an issue, reach out to your SMD person or come to an ANC committee meeting or whatever. That I think would be a little bit more transparent than just saying you're gonna deal with them when there's an issue, because there are some hot spots, and you know, just speaking for myself, I think it's more helpful to be transparent than to just react when something blows up. And there are some problem children that we have, and I'm sure you've gotten an email from Josh about one that I talked to him about over the weekend. But I just think from my perspective as a long-term resident here who dealt with different bars and different issues. I think the ANC needs to be a little bit more proactive. Doesn't have to do the exact same thing the ANC 1B did and deal with them, every single one of them, but be transparent and at least at the bare minimum, put it on your website and say, here's the applicants that we've received. If you have an issue, reach out to your ANC commission.
No, that's a great idea. Thank you. Brad, we could talk about just how to incorporate something like that on your landing page, but no, Patrick, thank you so much. That's a great discussion.
Yeah, happy to. Sorry,
Sorry,
Commissioner.
I raised my hand only to volunteer because I was the one that set up the website in the first place. Happy to, take that on, and then as we get new applications, I can make sure that they're on there.
Even better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll draft something and send it to you guys, and you can see. But yeah, Patrick, we can probably get that live in a couple of days.
Excellent.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Like to, motion with unanimous consent to adjourn for this evening, unless there are any objections. All right, hearing and seeing none, this committee hereby is adjourned at 9:05 p.m. Until Wednesday, September 13th at 7 p.m. The next meeting in the full ANC is not until Wednesday, September 27th, also at 7 p.m. More information on how to join these meetings and recordings of past meetings are available at anc1e.org. Thank you everyone for your time. Good night.
Thank you.